In the dead of a restless night, as rain lashed the windows and shadows danced on familiar walls, I stumbled upon a truth so searing it burned like acid through my veins. In a group chat I never meant to see, my wife had brazenly boasted about her affair, posting screenshots, laughing with her lover, and flaunting secret rendezvous as if they were badges of honor. That first message, so casually unguarded, shattered the illusion of our perfect life and sent shockwaves through my soul. I knew, in that horrifying moment, that everything I had believed in was nothing but a fragile facade waiting to crumble. For years, I had built my world on the foundation of trust and quiet routine. Amanda and I shared every sunrise and every whispered secret, our lives woven together by promises made in the soft glow of our shared home. We had our rituals, a weekend brunch at our favorite cafe, long evenings watching movies, and heartfelt conversations that stretched into the early hours. I prided myself on the transparency of our relationship. Our finances were shared, our calendars synchronized, and our hopes entwined in every decision we made. Yet, beneath the surface of our seemingly flawless marriage, small cracks had begun to form, tiny fissures that I had, perhaps willfully, ignored. It began with an innocuous conversation about a new messaging app my wife had started using at work, a tool for professional networking, she claimed. I never imagined that the same app would one day become the stage for her unrestrained boasts about forbidden pleasures. I had trusted her implicitly, believing that even if a secret existed, it would be harmless or fleeting. But one fateful night, as I aimlessly scrolled through my phone while waiting for sleep to claim me, a notification caught my eye. It was a group chat named Weekend Warriors that I wasn't a member of, yet somehow, a preview of its content popped up on my screen. At first, I assumed it was a mistake, a misdirected message from a coworker or a friend using a similar name. But curiosity, mingled with a nagging sense of foreboding, compelled me to tap on it. What I saw next made my blood run cold, a series of messages laden with laughter, self-congratulatory remarks, and explicit bragging about an affair. Amanda's name, along with a string of flirtatious emojis and casual boasts about stolen moments, leapt off the screen like daggers. The conversation was raw, unedited, and shockingly public, a digital confession of infidelity that she had shared with a group of friends, colleagues, and maybe even strangers. I sat frozen, heart pounding, as the words on the screen repeated themselves in a relentless loop. Every detail, the timestamps, the photos she had attached, the playful banter with someone she casually referred to as B, formed an undeniable mosaic of betrayal. It was as if a hidden world, previously concealed behind her polite smiles and quiet reassurances, had burst forth with all its painful truth. I felt an overwhelming mix of anger, humiliation, and a deep, searing sadness that threatened to swallow me whole. For a long time after that moment, I couldn't move. I remained seated in the dim light of our living room, clutching my phone as if it were a burning coal. My mind reeled back through our years together, every shared meal, every tender moment, now tainted by the realization that the foundation of my life had been built on lies. The perfect image of our marriage had crumbled into a pile of shattered fragments, each one a reminder of secrets I had never even suspected. In the days that followed, I was consumed by a silent, agonizing introspection. I replayed every conversation in my mind, searching for clues that I might have missed. I remembered the small moments, a fleeting hesitation before she answered a call, a secretive glance as she hid her phone when I entered the room, the slight delay in her responses when we discussed our weekend plans. Each memory, once innocent and endearing, now stung like a fresh wound. Determined to uncover the full extent of this betrayal, I began to retrace the digital footprints left behind in that group chat. I saved every screenshot, every message, and painstakingly noted the timestamps. My living room transformed into a crime scene of sorts, scattered with printed emails and chat logs that formed an indisputable trail of evidence. The more I delved into the chat, the clearer it became that Amanda had not only been unfaithful, but she had also flaunted her infidelity with a reckless, almost celebratory abandon. It was a revelation so brutal in its candor that I felt both enraged and hollow, as if a part of me had been ripped away. In that quiet devastation, I was forced to confront a question that I had long avoided: how could I have been so utterly blind? Had I really missed every subtle sign, every whispered nuance that hinted at her disloyalty? I scoured our shared history, reading old messages and scanning through social media posts, looking for something, a sign, a misstep, that I might have overlooked. The more I searched, the more I realized that the truth had been hidden in plain sight, cleverly masked by routine and trust. Amid this inner turmoil, a plan began to take shape. I decided that the next step was inevitable. I had to expose this painful secret to the world. Not for the sake of public humiliation alone, but as a way to reclaim control over a narrative that had been stolen from me. I spent long nights formulating a strategy, weighing the consequences of public exposure against the torturous silence of internal suffering. I knew that once the truth was out, there would be no turning back, no repairing the irreparable. Yet, the thought of continuing to live under the shadow of that betrayal was unbearable. In my solitude, I began to draft messages, outlines, and even blog posts, exploring how to articulate the multifaceted pain of betrayal and the journey of self-discovery that had unexpectedly begun. I envisioned a scenario where I would confront Amanda, not with explosive anger, but with a calm, deliberate unveiling of the truth. I imagined how the shock on her face would mirror the devastation I felt inside, and how the world would react to the collapse of what many believed to be a perfect marriage. I also reached out to a trusted friend, someone who had seen me at my most vulnerable and had always offered a steady hand. Over long conversations in hushed tones, I recounted the discovery, the group chat, and the raw evidence that now lay before me. His eyes filled with sympathetic understanding, yet his words were blunt. You deserve to know the truth, even if it hurts. Living in ignorance will only eat away at you until there's nothing left. His counsel, as painful as it was, affirmed that the course I had inadvertently set upon was necessary for my own healing, even if it meant shattering the last remnants of the marriage I thought was perfect. In the midst of all this, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. A part of me felt a burning need for revenge, a desire to let Amanda face the consequences of her betrayal in a way that would strip away any remaining illusion of a shared life. Yet another part of me, battered by the relentless sorrow of lost trust, longed for a quiet resolution, a path that might lead to healing and understanding rather than further destruction. I knew that exposing her indiscretions publicly would have consequences not just for her, but for both of us, and perhaps even for the life we had built together. It was a choice that weighed heavily on my soul. I spent days locked in my study, combing through every piece of evidence, every screenshot and digital log, as if each detail might offer a clue to what had driven her to betray me so callously. I documented the findings in a journal, each entry a raw outpouring of the shattered trust and mounting despair. I realized that the group chat was more than a mere digital conversation. It was a window into a hidden world of arrogance and unapologetic infidelity, a space where my wife had proudly broadcast her betrayal without a care for the consequences. That revelation was the catalyst for the journey I was about to embark on, a journey that would force me to confront the painful duality of love and betrayal. I had always believed that marriage was built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared dreams, but now I saw that beneath the surface, our life was riddled with unspoken truths and secret indulgences. Every memory of our laughter, every whispered promise in the dark, now resonated with a tragic irony that left me questioning the very nature of trust. In the final moments of that tumultuous night, as I sat alone with the rain tapping a mournful cadence on the windows, I made a vow to myself. I would no longer be a silent sufferer, trapped by the weight of betrayal. I would expose the truth, not out of a desire for petty vengeance, but to reclaim my own identity from the ruins of a lie. My heart ached with the realization that the perfect marriage I had believed in was nothing but a carefully constructed illusion, and it was time to face that reality head-on. Thus began the long, painful process of uncovering every hidden thread of deceit, a process that would eventually lead me to a crossroads where I would have to decide whether to let the truth tear us apart entirely, or to find a way to build something new from the shattered remains of our past. The journey ahead promised no simple answers, only a path fraught with emotional peril, but I knew that I had reached a point where silence was no longer an option. With every piece of evidence I compiled, every cryptic message I deciphered, I felt both the sting of betrayal and the slow, burning resolve of a man determined to reclaim his life. I began to understand that the journey toward truth was as much about self-discovery as it was about exposing another's indiscretions. And so, as the first light of dawn broke through the stormy night, I stood at the threshold of a new reality, one where the perfect image of our marriage was forever shattered, and the painful truth was now mine to confront. In the days following that fateful revelation, my world turned into a labyrinth of silent observations and unspoken dread. Outwardly, I maintained the mask of a devoted husband, greeting Amanda with calm smiles and engaging in our daily routines as if nothing had changed. Yet every waking moment, I felt a gnawing pressure, like an itch I couldn't scratch, reminding me of the group chat message that had shattered the perfect illusion I once believed in. I spent hours replaying that digital confession in my mind, the echo of her unapologetic boasts haunting every thought. I knew I had to peel back the layers of deceit, to unravel every hidden thread that had led to that staggering moment of exposure. I began by retracing the digital footprints left behind in that infamous group chat. Every message, every emoji, every timestamp became a piece of the puzzle I desperately needed to assemble. I scoured through our shared devices and meticulously documented every suspicious interaction. It wasn't long before I discovered patterns I had never noticed before, a series of messages exchanged at odd hours, private conversations where her laughter was too carefree, too mocking, and subtle hints that she was not just boasting to friends, but reveling in the thrill of her betrayal. Each piece of evidence stoked the fire of my disbelief and the chill of my heartbreak. Driven by an insatiable need for truth, I began to compile my findings into a secure digital archive. Late into the night, I would sit at my desk, the only light coming from my computer screen, and methodically save screenshots, export chat logs, and annotate each detail with dates and my raw, unfiltered thoughts. The process was both cathartic and corrosive. Each new discovery was a double-edged sword, deepening the pain of betrayal while simultaneously fueling my resolve to expose it. I could feel my identity splintering, the man who once believed in the sanctity of our marriage now transforming into a careful archivist of our shared lies. During the day, I moved through our home like a ghost. I watched Amanda from a distance as she scrolled through her phone, her expression guarded and her eyes occasionally darting sideways as if expecting to be caught. I recalled how, before the revelations, I would have admired her ease and confidence, but now each movement was a potential admission of guilt. I started noticing little details that I had once taken for granted, the way she would reply to messages in a tone that was overly casual, or the slight delay before she would answer my questions about her day. Every nuance, once innocent, now felt laden with hidden meaning, a secret life carefully concealed behind the screen of her phone. As I documented these moments, a quiet anger began to simmer inside me. It wasn't explosive or overt at first, it was a slow-burning fury, mixed with a profound sorrow for the loss of trust. I recalled the countless evenings we had spent discussing our future, planning vacations, and dreaming aloud about a life filled with shared joy. Those memories now felt like brittle fragments of a dream that had crumbled under the weight of her betrayal. I realized that the digital confessions in that group chat were not merely random moments of arrogance, they were the visible cracks in a foundation I had believed unbreakable. The more I delved into the details, the more I began to question the narrative I had once taken for granted. Had I been so blinded by love and the comforting routine of our life that I ignored the subtle signals of her disloyalty? I scrolled through old messages, rereading our texts with a new, suspicious lens. Every seemingly trivial remark, a hurried excuse, a forced laugh, a sidelong glance, became a part of the mosaic that now depicted a reality I never wanted to face. I felt a bitter regret, wondering if I had been complicit in creating an environment where secrets could thrive. In my relentless pursuit of hidden truth, I confronted not only Amanda's actions but also my own vulnerability, my desperate need to believe in a perfect union. One evening, as dusk settled over our quiet suburban street, I decided to test the waters of confrontation without unleashing the full storm. I casually asked Amanda about a recent expense at a boutique spa, a detail I had noticed on our bank statement that had no clear explanation. Her answer was vague, almost rehearsed, it was just a little treat, I needed to relax. Her tone was light, too light, and the ease with which she dismissed my question only added to the growing chasm between what I knew and what she was saying. I pressed gently, asking if she could recall the details, but she only offered a quick, dismissive laugh and changed the subject. That moment confirmed my suspicions without her having to say more. I could see the fleeting flicker of guilt in her eyes, quickly masked by an air of nonchalance. It was enough to chill me to the bone. With each passing day, my silent investigation gathered momentum. I began to notice that Amanda was taking extra precautions with her phone, locking it more frequently, deleting messages, even leaving the house with her device tucked away in a purse rather than openly on her person. I started to suspect that she was aware, on some subconscious level, that the truth might one day emerge. I recorded these observations in my journal, a painstaking chronicle of every moment of hesitation, every instance of evasiveness that added layers to the undeniable evidence of her infidelity. I felt like an outsider in my own life, watching as the woman I loved crafted a reality that excluded me. Even as I immersed myself in this digital sleuthing, I struggled with an overwhelming inner conflict. A part of me longed to confront Amanda immediately, to demand answers and to unleash a torrent of emotions that had been locked away for far too long. Yet another part of me, hardened by the meticulous gathering of evidence and the slow unraveling of our shared past, preferred to let silence be my shield, a deliberate choice to absorb the betrayal in quiet, methodical steps. I told myself that if I exposed her gradually, the full impact of the truth would hit her like a tidal wave, leaving no room for denial or half measures. It was a cold, calculated decision, born out of a mixture of heartbreak and a desire to reclaim control over my shattered identity. My nights became a blur of hushed conversations with myself and feverish note-taking. I would pace the dimly lit corridors of our home, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silence, while my mind replayed the group chat messages over and over. I dissected each phrase, each emoji, trying to understand the nuances of her tone and the implications behind her casual bragging. The evidence was irrefutable. Amanda had shared details of her affair with a group of friends, and in doing so, had almost laughed away the gravity of her betrayal. Yet the more I examined the digital trail, the more I began to wonder about the context. What had driven her to openly celebrate what she knew would be a forbidden indulgence? Had she felt constrained by the limitations of our marriage, or was it a reckless assertion of independence that I had failed to see? These questions swirled through my mind, each one intensifying the emotional maelstrom inside me. I began reaching out to my closest friend, James, for counsel. Over long, somber conversations on late nights, I poured out the details of my discovery, the group chat, the mysterious photos, and the chilling nonchalance with which Amanda had boasted about her escapades. James, whose own experiences with betrayal had left him with scars, listened intently, his silence filled with a mix of empathy and sorrow. "You deserve to know the truth," he said quietly, "even if it means facing a reality you'd rather ignore." His words, simple yet profound, resonated deeply with me and solidified my determination to continue gathering the evidence. James's support became a cornerstone of my resolve, reminding me that I was not alone in this painful journey. As the investigation deepened, I carefully began to plan the next phase, one where the truth, amassed through countless discrete observations, would no longer be confined to my private journal. I envisioned a moment when I would confront Amanda with the digital dossier I had compiled, a moment that would force her to reckon with the consequences of her choices. I rehearsed the conversation in my head repeatedly, each time refining my words so that they would cut through the veneer of denial with surgical precision. I was acutely aware that once I opened that door, there would be no turning back. The final act of exposure would shatter any lingering illusions, leaving only the stark, naked truth in its wake. Yet, even as I prepared for that confrontation, I couldn't shake the lingering doubt that gnawed at me in quiet moments. I wrestled with the paradox of seeking justice without destroying what little remained of our connection. I wondered if, by exposing her indiscretions so thoroughly, I might also be obliterating any chance of understanding or forgiveness. The thought was both terrifying and strangely compelling. Could the revelation of such a painful truth ever lead to healing, or was it destined to be the final nail in the coffin of our shared past? In the soft, reflective hours before dawn, as I reviewed the collected evidence one last time, I felt the full gravity of my silent crusade. The dossier had grown into a testament to betrayal, a mosaic of digital snapshots and hushed moments that painted a picture of a life that Amanda had kept hidden behind a veneer of normalcy. With every entry, I sensed the growing inevitability of a confrontation that would force the truth into the light. I could feel my heart hardening against the tide of despair, even as every word I had documented whispered a painful reminder of what I had lost. And so, with a mix of dread and determination, I resolved that the time had come to step out of the shadows of silent observation. I would no longer be the man who suffered in silence while his world crumbled unnoticed. The next step in my journey was clear. I would confront Amanda, armed with the irrefutable evidence of her betrayal, and demand answers that had long been buried beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect marriage. I knew that the path ahead was fraught with pain, that the unveiling of these hidden truths would forever change our lives. But I also knew that I could no longer live with the heavy burden of uncertainty, a burden that had slowly consumed the man I once was. As I sat there in the dim glow of the study, the quiet hum of the night punctuating my thoughts, I took a deep, steadying breath. I understood that every step I took from this moment on would alter the course of my future irrevocably. My silent war had led me to this precipice, and now, with the dossier clutched in my hands, I was ready to face the truth head-on. The perfect marriage I had once believed in was nothing but a fragile illusion, and I was determined to reclaim my identity by tearing that illusion apart, one painful, honest moment at a time. In the cold glare of a morning that seemed to know no mercy, the moment of confrontation had finally come. The digital evidence I had painstakingly collected, screenshots of the group chat brimming with Amanda's brazen boasts, timestamps, and even photos attached to her flippant remarks, was now laid bare on our living room coffee table like a silent indictment. My heart pounded with a mix of dread and grim resolve as I awaited the inevitable fallout. Every detail of that chat, every unapologetic emoji and careless brag, was proof that the perfect marriage I once cherished was nothing more than an elaborate lie. In that moment, I knew that exposing her secret wasn't merely about public humiliation, it was a final reckoning, a desperate bid to reclaim my identity and shatter the false illusion that had held me captive for too long. When Amanda finally returned home that day, her eyes betrayed a flash of uncertainty as she took in the scene. Our once warm living room transformed into a gallery of incriminating evidence. I didn't raise my voice or launch into a tirade of accusations. Instead, I spoke slowly, deliberately, "Amanda, we need to talk." My tone was even, yet every word was loaded with the gravity of betrayal. I laid out the evidence one by one, the group chat screenshots, the detailed timestamps, the messages that seemed to mock the sanctity of our vows. For a long, agonizing minute, silence reigned between us, heavy and oppressive, until her eyes began to fill with tears, and the mask of confidence that she had maintained for so long crumbled away. Her confession was not a dramatic outburst but a quiet, broken admission. She admitted that she had been involved with her lover, a man she had once described merely as fun, and that she'd boasted about it in a group chat, believing it to be a private joke shared with friends. She mumbled something about feeling alive and desired, words that cut through me like shards of glass. I listened, numb, as she recounted how the affair began as a misguided escape from routine, a thrill to counterbalance the monotony of our life. Each sentence was a bitter pill, the realization that my trust had been so deeply betrayed, that every tender memory we had shared was now sullied by the raw truth of her infidelity. The confrontation spiraled into a long, painful discussion. We talked in low, trembling voices, the room heavy with unspoken sorrow. Amanda apologized repeatedly, her words mixing regret with half-hearted justifications. I demanded to know how long it had been going on, how she could live with such duplicity, and why she chose to broadcast her affair to others. Her answers were evasive and vague, she could only offer a series of disjointed explanations that did little to soothe the wound in my heart. In that painful exchange, I felt the perfect marriage, our shared dreams, our long-cherished routines, disintegrate before my eyes into irreparable fragments. After that night, the fallout was both immediate and relentless. The group chat screenshots, once my private torment, soon found their way into a blog post by a local journalist I had discreetly contacted. Within days, what had once been an intimate betrayal became a public scandal. Headlines splashed across the local news read, "Cheating wife brags affair in group chat, husband exposes all." I became an unwilling symbol of shattered trust and public humiliation, and Amanda's world, once filled with the gentle warmth of shared secrets, crumbled under the relentless glare of public scrutiny. Friends, family, and even acquaintances, those who had once admired our seemingly perfect union, now whispered their disapproval, their shock, and in some cases, their pity. The media frenzy was merciless. I found myself inundated with questions from reporters who wanted to know how I had discovered the affair, how I had managed to keep such a terrible secret, and what my plans were for the future. At first, I felt a grim satisfaction in knowing that the truth was finally out, that Amanda could no longer hide behind her carefully constructed facade. But as the days wore on, that satisfaction soured into an unexpected emptiness. The exposure, instead of bringing me closure, left me hollow. The public unmasking of her betrayal felt like a double-edged sword. It had freed me from the shackles of deceit, yet it had also irrevocably altered the fabric of my life. In the weeks following the exposé, I retreated further into solitude. I no longer joined gatherings with friends or frequented the local cafe where I once laughed over shared stories. Instead, I found solace in long, solitary walks along rain-drenched sidewalks and quiet evenings spent in the dim light of my study. Each night, I would revisit my journal, reading the raw, unedited accounts of my discovery and the painstaking process of gathering evidence. Every entry was a reminder of the journey, from the innocent curiosity that led me to hire a private investigator, to the shattering moment when I saw Amanda's brazen confessions, to the painful confrontation that followed. With each word, I relived the torment of betrayal and the slow, inexorable loss of the man I once was. During this period of isolation, I began to seek therapy. My sessions with a compassionate counselor opened up new avenues of introspection, forcing me to confront not only Amanda's betrayal but also the deeper questions of self-worth, identity, and trust. In the safe space of those sessions, I learned that while exposing the truth was necessary, the real work was in understanding how that truth had transformed me. I realized that I had allowed myself to be defined by the lie of a perfect marriage, and now I had to rebuild from the wreckage, step by painful step. I discovered that the journey to healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about integrating it into a new, more authentic understanding of who I was and what I deserved. As time passed, I began to reassemble the scattered pieces of my identity. I started to engage in activities that once brought me joy, reading, writing poetry, even picking up my old guitar, and slowly, I allowed myself to feel again. The memories of Amanda's betrayal, though still a source of pain, began to serve as lessons rather than perpetual wounds. I learned to see that the perfect image of our marriage was never as solid as I had believed, that trust is fragile and must be continually nurtured. The exposure of her indiscretions, as harsh as it had been, forced me to face the reality that no relationship is immune to imperfection. And in that confrontation, I discovered an inner strength that I had never known existed. I reconnected with old friends who offered their support without judgment, and I immersed myself in new experiences that gradually filled the void left by the collapse of our shared life. I began volunteering at a local community center, an act that, in its simplicity, reminded me that life continued beyond the confines of a broken marriage. Each act of kindness, every moment spent helping others, became a small beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is a possibility for renewal. I also started writing a blog about my journey, a raw, honest account of betrayal, exposure, and the painful path toward healing. The response was overwhelming. Strangers from all walks of life reached out with their own stories of heartache and redemption, reinforcing the belief that I was not alone in my struggle. Even as I slowly rebuilt my life, the public fallout of Amanda's actions continued to reverberate. The scandal had irrevocably altered our social circle, and whispers of her indiscretions became a constant, inescapable background noise. I noticed how even those who had once admired our union now kept a respectful distance, as if my very presence was a reminder of the shattered trust. Yet, in that isolation, I also found clarity. I realized that the path to true healing required me to let go of the need for retribution, to release the anger that had fueled my every move since that fateful discovery. One rainy afternoon, as I sat by the window watching droplets race down the glass, I made a decision, a quiet, resolute choice to move forward. I wrote one final, lengthy entry in my journal, summarizing the journey of betrayal and exposure, acknowledging the pain and the bitter taste of revenge, but also embracing the small, emerging hope that lay beneath it all. I concluded that while Amanda's public exposure had indeed left her with nothing, it had also liberated me from the suffocating grip of a past built on illusions. The truth, harsh as it was, had set me free, free to redefine my life, to rebuild my identity, and to rediscover the meaning of trust and love on my own terms. In the months that followed, I began to truly let go of the need to dwell on every detail of the betrayal. I donated the dossier of evidence, those physical remnants of the digital confessions, to a secure storage, not out of spite, but as a symbolic act of moving on. I embraced therapy, support groups, and my newfound creative pursuits with an open heart. I learned that forgiveness wasn't about absolving Amanda or forgetting the past, it was about liberating myself from the endless cycle of bitterness. With each passing day, I took small, deliberate steps toward rebuilding a future that was defined not by the pain of betrayal, but by the quiet strength that emerges after the storm. Now, as I reflect on the long, winding road that led me from that shattering night to this fragile dawn of renewal, I see my journey as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The digital confession that once broke me open has, paradoxically, also given me the opportunity to rediscover who I am, beyond the illusions of a perfect marriage, beyond the bitter taste of revenge. I have learned that the most profound revelations are often the ones that force us to confront our deepest vulnerabilities, and that true healing begins when we finally embrace our scars as symbols of survival. Today, I move forward with cautious optimism. The memory of Amanda's brazen boasts in that group chat still stings, a reminder of a past that cannot be erased. But I no longer allow that pain to define every moment of my life. Instead, I use it as a catalyst, a reminder that while trust may be shattered, it can also be rebuilt, stronger and more authentic than before. I have chosen to write a new chapter, one where the truth, once exposed with ruthless clarity, now paves the way for a life of honest self-discovery and quiet redemption. This is my rebirth, a journey from the ruins of betrayal to a future filled with the soft promise of healing, where every new day is a chance to redefine what love, trust, and forgiveness mean to me. I know that the scars will remain, not as marks of defeat, but as emblems of a resilience that carries me forward, step by determined step, into a tomorrow that holds the potential for renewal and hope. And so, as the rain subsides and the first rays of a gentle sunrise filter through the remnants of the night, I stand ready to face whatever comes next. I have learned that the truth, no matter how painful, has the power to set us free. In the quiet aftermath of exposure, I have discovered that the journey toward healing is neither linear nor easy, but it is a journey worth taking. With each day, I choose to embrace the new possibilities that arise from the wreckage of what was once believed to be perfect, and I pledge to live a life defined not by the betrayals of the past, but by the enduring strength and hope that guide me into a brighter future.